When I think back to the beginning, I remember laughter. Not the fake kind people force at parties. I mean the kind that fills a kitchen at AM while you both burn the toast, then argue over who forgot to buy orange juice. The kind that makes your stomach hurt and your eyes water because you're with your best friend. That was us. Me and Daniel. We lived in a 2-bedroom brick house on Willow Lane. The kind with creaky floors, peeling paint on the porch, and more charm than square footage. We made it our own with Sunday trips to the flea market and a dozen fights over where to hang the vintage welcome sign. He wanted it over the front door. I wanted it on the side gate. He won. That time, Daniel was thoughtful, steady, the kind of man who remembered how I took my coffee and never forgot our anniversary not once in 7 years. I thought I knew everything about him. Until I didn't. Foundation of trust people always told us we were ghouls. I used to roll my eyes when our friends said that, but secretly, I liked hearing it. I was proud of us. We'd met in college junior year ethics class, of all places, and somehow, between late-night study sessions and cheap tacos, we fell in love. Daniel was different from anyone I'd ever dated. He wasn't loud or flashy. He listened, really listened. When my mom got sick and I had to drop out for a semester, he didn't run. He stayed. He held me through grief, held my hand at the funeral, and helped me put myself back together. We built a life around routines. Friday night movies, pancake Sundays, summer road trips with no real destination. It was predictable, maybe even boring to some, but it was safe. I trusted that safety. I trusted him. The first hairline crack, it started on a Tuesday. Daniel's phone buzzed while he was in the shower. Nothing unusual. Except this time, it was from his mother, Murray. The notification preview said, "I told you this would come back eventually. Call me, now." I froze. Murray and I got along. Okay. She was polite, old school Southern, always dressed like she was headed to church even on a weekday. But there was always something guarded in her tone, like she was constantly keeping me at arm's length. Daniel said she was just private. But this text, it didn't feel like privacy. It felt like panic. I didn't want to snoop. I really didn't. But the text burned into my brain all day. When Daniel got home from work, I asked casually, "Hey, everything okay with your mom?" He paused. Barely a second, but I noticed it. "Yeah," he said quickly. "She's just being dramatic again. You know how she is." But I didn't. Not really. The unraveling begins after that. Things started to feel off. Daniel became quieter, distracted. At first, I thought it was stress. He was handling a big project at work, so I didn't push. But one night, I caught him staring at a framed photo of his dad. Just staring. For a long time, his father, Thomas Reed, had died when Daniel was 16. Cancer, Daniel once told me. He never talked much about it, and I never pried. But that night, I asked gently, "Are you okay?" He blinked, almost like he'd forgotten I was there. "Yeah, just thinking about stuff. Work's been crazy." Another lie. I felt it in my bones. Still, I didn't press. Not then. I told myself people were allowed their secrets, even in marriage. But soon, it wasn't just distance. It was avoidance. He stopped calling his mom on Sundays like he used to. He deleted messages before I could see them. And one night, when he thought I was asleep, I heard him whispering into the phone, "No, I haven't told her. I can't. She doesn't need to know." Digging into the past, that was the night I stopped pretending everything was normal. The next morning, while Daniel was out jogging, I did something I never imagined I'd do. I opened his closet. Not metaphorically. Literally. I opened the top shelf where he kept an old showbox labeled college stuff. I'd seen it before, thought it was filled with boring papers and college junk. But now, I needed to know. Inside I found old photos. Us, in our younger years. Sweet. Harmless. But beneath those was a folder. Thick. Yellowed with age. Legal documents. Medical papers. Birth certificates, except not his. The name on the document, Ethan Thomas Callahan, born 2 years before Daniel. To Marie Callahan, no father listed. My stomach flipped. The photo attached to the file? It was Daniel, a little younger, hair a shade lighter but undeniably him. My husband wasn't Daniel Reed. He was Ethan Callahan. The confrontation, I waited for him to come home. I couldn't eat, couldn't sit still. My chest ached from holding my breath all afternoon. When he walked through the door, smiling like nothing had changed, I felt a wave of nausea. "Who is Ethan Callahan?" I asked. The smile vanished. His face went pale, truly pale, like blood drained from his soul. He didn't answer right away, just stood there, silent. I held up the folder. "Why are you living under a fake name? What else are you hiding from me?" He sat down slowly on the arm of the couch, rubbing his temples. "It's not fake. Not exactly. It's complicated, Make. It's simple," I said coldly. And so he did. The truth begins to surface. He told me everything. Or so he claimed. His name was Ethan Callahan. His mother, Marie, had him when she was barely 16. The man listed as his father was a violent addict. He disappeared before Daniel turned 2. When Marie married Thomas Reed, they changed Ethan's name to Daniel Reed. No formal adoption, just a new start in a new town, a fresh identity. They buried the past. No one was to speak of it again. "I didn't want that version of me to exist anymore," he said. "Ethan died the day my mom remarried." I was shaking. "But why lie to me?" He looked at me with those eyes I used to love. "Because I didn't think it mattered anymore. I wasn't trying to hurt you." But he had. Not because of the name, but because of the lies. The cover-up. The years we spent building a life together, and he never told me who he really was. That night, I slept in the guest room. The bed was cold, too small. I stared at the ceiling for hours, thinking about every moment we'd shared. Every laugh, every kiss, every promise. Was it all built on a lie? The next morning, I woke up to find a letter on the kitchen table, folded neatly, my name on the front. Inside, "There's more you don't know. About me, about my family. If you still want the truth, meet me at my mother's house tomorrow at 10. I didn't know what scared me more, what I'd already learned, or what was still waiting for me. The letter sat on the table like it was breathing. Just 5 lines on cheap printer paper, but it might as well have been a stick of dynamite. I didn't touch it for 10 minutes. I just stared at it while my coffee went cold, and the house, one so familiar, felt like someone else's life. "There's more you don't know." No kidding. I barely slept the night before. When I did, I dreamt of falling over and over again, reaching for Daniel's hand, only to watch him vanish into blackness. When I woke, I had tears on my cheeks and an ache in my chest I couldn't explain. And now, this letter, this invitation, this warning. 10 o'clock at his mother's house. I checked the clock. 9:22 a.m. I had a choice. Walk away, or drive straight into the fire. I grabbed my keys. Marie's house, a chilly reception. Marie lived on the edge of town in a 2-story colonial she inherited from her parents. The place was always neat. Too neat. Like nobody actually lived there. When I pulled up to the house, I saw Daniel's car parked in front. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. 1,000 thoughts chased each other through my head, none of them comforting. I rang the bell. It was Marie who opened the door. She didn't say hello. Didn't ask me in. She just looked at me like I was a problem she had hoped never to deal with. Her eyes were cold, calculating. "You shouldn't have found that folder," she said flatly. I blinked. "You knew?" She stepped aside, motioning for me to enter. I knew eventually Ethan Daniel would slip. He's too sentimental for his own good. I walked in slowly, my heart pounding. Daniel was already in the living room, sitting on the edge of the couch, hands clasped, eyes full of guilt. "Thanks for coming," he said. I sat down without answering. Marie remained standing, like she didn't want to be part of this but also couldn't look away. Truth is a slow poison. Daniel didn't make me wait long. "What I told you yesterday, about changing my name, that was only part of it," he began, eyes lowered. "There's more, a lot more." I braced myself. My real father, he didn't just leave. He was dangerous. Marie cut in sharply. "He was a monster." Daniel flinched but nodded. "He was violent," he said. "To my mom. To anyone who crossed him. He ran a small-time gang out of Nashville. Drugs, extortion, dirty money. But The worst part, he used my birth certificate to smuggle identities. I stared. What does that even mean? It means, Marie said, voice tight, that when he disappeared, his mess didn't. And Daniel's real name, Ethan Callahan, got flagged in a federal investigation. My stomach dropped. Daniel rubbed his eyes. There were times in college I'd apply for internships, jobs, and get rejected with no explanation. We later learned my name was still tied to open warrants. I leaned back in disbelief. So you changed your name to hide from it? To escape it? Daniel said. Legally, I'm still Ethan Callahan. But for my own safety, for your safety, I became Daniel Reed. Quiet. Invisible. My head was spinning. And you never thought to tell me this? Not once, in 7 years of marriage? He looked up, his voice cracking. I was ashamed. I didn't want you to see me through that lens, eh? Different kind of betrayal. Marie left us alone after that, retreating to the kitchen. I could still hear the sound of dishes clinking, like she needed something to do with her hands. Maybe to drown out the guilt or distract from it. I sat in silence, trying to absorb the weight of it all. So, I said finally, your whole identity was built to escape your father's sins, and you thought burying the truth would protect us? He nodded. I didn't marry Daniel Reed, I whispered. I married a lie. That's not fair. He shot back, suddenly louder than I expected. Everything between us was real. My love for you, that was real. I stood up, but the foundation wasn't. Don't you get that? He looked like a wounded animal. I was just trying to be someone better. The family tree cracks. I didn't want to ask the next question, but I had to. Is he still alive? Your father? Daniel hesitated. Marie called from the kitchen, her voice sharp as broken glass. He's dead. Been dead 20 years. Good riddance, Daniel confirmed it quietly. Car crash. Suspected foul play. They never caught who did it. I exhaled. One less thing to worry about. But a new dread crept in. If he's dead, why hide all these years? Marie stepped back in, drying her hands on a towel. Because secrets have a way of sticking around long after the people who made them are gone. I turned to her. You were complicit in all of this. You helped him lie. Marie didn't blink. I protected my son. The world wasn't going to forgive Ethan Callahan, no matter how innocent he was. So we gave him a second chance. I felt my voice rising, at the cost of my trust. You wouldn't have stayed, she said simply. No one would have alone together that night. Daniel and I drove home in silence. He tried to reach for my hand on the gear shift. I pulled away. We were two strangers in the same car. Strangers with too much history. Back at home, I went straight to the bedroom and locked the door. I heard him sit on the couch. Heard the TV turn on, then off. Then just silence. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just laid there, staring at the ceiling again, wondering how long you could love someone who was never truly who they said they were. The journal 2 days later. While Daniel was at work, I found a journal tucked behind his sock drawer. It was old, leather-bound, filled with uneven handwriting and tear-stained pages. It started in college. Page after page of guilt, anger, fear. One entry stood out. If she ever finds out, she'll leave, and I won't blame her. But maybe, just maybe, she'll understand why I had to become someone else to survive. I closed the book and held it to my chest. I didn't know what hurt more, his fear of losing me, or the fact that he never gave me the chance to choose. That night, we talked, or tried to. I told him I needed time, space. I still love you, I said, but I don't know if I can forgive you. Not yet. He nodded, eyes glassy. I'll wait, however long it takes. But I wasn't sure if time could fix this, because love without truth isn't love at all. And I had a new question now when I wasn't ready to ask out loud. What else don't I know? They say silence can be peaceful, healing even. But in our house, silence became a weapon. Days passed after our last conversation. Daniel moved to the guest room without a word. We functioned like polite strangers, sharing space, splitting chores, passing each other in the kitchen with awkward, heavy nods. I told myself I needed time. But what I really needed was truth. The whole truth. Because despite everything Daniel had confessed, I couldn't shake the feeling he was still holding something back. something bigger, something darker, something that didn't fit neatly into his rewritten life, and I was about to find out I was right. A visit from the past. It was a Thursday afternoon when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Daniel was at work. I was halfway through folding laundry when the sound startled me. I opened the door cautiously. A woman stood there, late 40s, maybe early 50s, sharp features, piercing gray eyes. She looked at me like she already knew who I was. "Are you Ethan's wife?" My breath caught. "Excuse me." She smiled sadly. "I knew him as Ethan, but I hear he goes by Daniel now." I didn't answer, just stepped aside and let her in. Something in her voice, firm but grieving, told me she wasn't a threat. Not exactly. She sat down on the edge of our couch like she'd been here before, like she knew the house. Her eyes flicked to the photo of Daniel and me on the mantel. Her lips tightened. "I'm not here to hurt you," she said softly, "but you deserve to know the rest." Her name was Rachel Callahan. She introduced herself. "I'm Daniel's aunt, his father's sister." That stopped me cold. His father's sister? I thought he never talks about us, she interrupted. Gently. "I'm not surprised. We weren't exactly close. But blood doesn't just disappear." She reached into her purse and handed me a faded photograph. Two boys, maybe 7 and 9, standing barefoot on cracked pavement. One of them was unmistakably young Daniel. "Or Ethan, the other boy?" she said, tapping the photo. "That's Jordan, Ethan's half-brother. My nephew, your husband's brother." I felt the floor tilt beneath me. "Wait, what? Daniel has a brother?" Rachel nodded slowly. "Had. Jordan died when he was 10. The air left the room, the tragedy buried." I listened in stunned silence as Rachel told me the story, each detail hitting harder than the last. Their father, Daniel's biological dad, was a violent man. But what Daniel hadn't told me was that he wasn't just violent toward Murray. He was abusive to both sons. Jordan got the worst of it. One night, after a particularly brutal outburst, there was a fire. The official report said it was an accident, something about faulty wiring. But Rachel, she didn't believe that. "I think Jordan said it," she whispered. "I think he tried to escape, and it went wrong. Jordan died. Ethan Daniels survived. Barely. That was the moment Marie took her son, left everything behind, and started over. A new name, a new life, a new lie. And no one was ever supposed to know." Daniel returns. I didn't know how long Rachel had been talking when the door opened. Daniel walked in, briefcase still in hand, his face collapsing when he saw her. "You shouldn't be here," he said coldly. Rachel stood slowly. "I know, but she deserves the truth." Daniel looked at me. His face was pale, drawn. "You went digging." "I didn't have to," I replied. "The past came to me." He turned away, running a hand through his hair. "You don't understand." "I do," I said sharply. "You lost a brother. You lived through hell. But why didn't you tell me?" His voice cracked. "Because it broke me, and I didn't want you to see how broken I really am. When love isn't enough." That night, we didn't argue. We sat together in the dim glow of the living room, two people carrying grief too heavy for words. He told me about Jordan, how they used to build Lego castles together, pretend the living room was a jungle, whisper about running away when their dad drank too much. He told me about the fire, how he watched his brother scream for help from behind a locked bedroom door, how his mother yanked him out just in time, how the smell of smoke still wakes him in the middle of the night. I held his hand as he cried. For the first time in days, I let him touch me. "I've carried this for 20 years, he whispered. "I thought burying it would make it go away, but it never does." "No," I said quietly, "it doesn't." The final reveal, we thought that was the end of the secrets. But the universe wasn't done with us. A week later, I received a certified letter in the mail, addressed to Ethan Callahan, care of me, forwarded from his old high school. I almost didn't open it, but I did. Inside was a will, from a man named Richard Steele. I didn't recognize the name, but Daniel did. "That was my father's alias," he said, staring at the page like it might bite him. "Turns out, Richard, or whatever his real name was, had a second family. Another woman, another child, a daughter, now an adult. Her name, Emily Steele. She wanted to meet her brother. My heart sank again. Another sibling. Another crack in the foundation I thought was solid. Why is this happening now? I asked. I don't know, he said. But I think it's time I stop hiding. We sat in silence again. But this time, it wasn't cold. It was the silence of two people standing at the edge of something huge, unknown, scary, but necessary. Daniel looked at me, eyes full of pleading and pain. I want to make this right. I want you to know all of me, even the parts I'm ashamed of. I didn't respond right away, because I still didn't know the answer to the question that had haunted me from the start. Can love survive when the truth is too heavy to carry? I used to think heartbreak was loud. You know, the screaming, the slamming doors, the sound of glass breaking. But that wasn't how it happened for me. When everything came crashing down, it wasn't a bang. It was silence. Cold, empty, final. After, the truth came out that Daniel wasn't just hiding a name, but an entire family. A dead brother. A second sibling we didn't even know existed. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stopped. Stopped asking questions. Stopped talking. Stopped feeling like his wife. Something inside me had cracked. Something I wasn't sure could ever be fixed. A house divided, we kept living under the same roof, but it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a waiting room. A quiet, uncomfortable space where neither of us wanted to be the first to speak. We had dinner in silence. Folded laundry in separate rooms. Slept in separate beds. Sometimes I caught him staring at me across the room, like he was trying to remember who we used to be. And sometimes I stared back, wondering the same. We both existed in the same space. But we weren't us anymore. We were two ghosts haunting the remains of a marriage. The letter from Emily. It was Emily who forced the next step. One afternoon, I came home to find an envelope on the kitchen table. It had no stamp, hand delivered. Daniel's half-sister. Inside was a simple note. Dear Ethan, I know this is sudden. I'm not here to judge or bring back the past. I just want to understand where I come from. Please meet me. I think we both deserve some closure. There was a number, a cafe address, a date and time. Daniel looked up at me, eyes unsure. I don't know if I can handle this. I didn't say it to be cruel, but the words came out sharp. You don't really have a choice, do you? He nodded slowly. Would you come with me? I hesitated. For a moment, I wanted to say no to make him face it alone. But part of me, a part I thought had gone numb, wanted to see what this truth looked like. The final piece of the puzzle. Okay, I said. I'll go. Meeting Emily, the cafe was quiet. Warm lighting, soft jazz. One of those places that smelled like cinnamon and secrets. Emily was already there. Mid-30s, stylish, calm. She looked like she belonged in a magazine. But her eyes, they were Daniel's. Same shape, same sadness. She stood when we arrived. Daniel froze. Hi, she said, offering a soft smile. You must be Ethan. He cleared his throat. It's Daniel now. But, yeah, they sat across from each other like reflections in a mirror, to strangers bound by blood, separated by secrets. I watched as they talked. Slowly, awkwardly at first, Emily told us her mother never talked about her father, just that he was gone. A man with shadows for a face. When he died, Emily inherited a few personal items, including a sealed letter addressed to Ethan Callahan. In it, her father confessed everything. The abuse, the fear, the guilt over Jordan, the second family, the name change. I didn't even know if you were real, she said, eyes glassy. But I had to try. Daniel said nothing for a long time. Then finally, he whispered, thank you for finding me, even when I didn't want to be found. We don't heal the same way after the meeting. Daniel seemed different, lighter, like he could finally breathe again. But I didn't. If anything, I felt heavier, like I'd been holding his pain for so long. I hadn't noticed how much it had become mine too. And now that he'd let it go, I was still carrying what was left. That night, I told him I needed space. Real space. Not just another room down the hall. I needed distance. Are you leaving me? He asked, his voice cracking. I don't know. I said truthfully. But I can't stay in a house where everything reminds me of the life I thought I had. He nodded. Didn't argue. He just said, okay, I'll wait. My sister's couch. I moved in with my sister Rachel, not to be confused with his Aunt Rachel, for a while. It was cramped and awkward, but she never asked questions. Just made tea and let me cry when I needed to. I started therapy, alone, for the first time in years. I wasn't Daniel's wife. I was just me, and honestly, I didn't recognize her at first. I'd wrapped so much of my identity around our marriage, our routines, his story. I forgot to write my own, and now I was trying to start from scratch. Letters we never sent in the weeks that followed. Daniel and I started writing letters, real, pen-on-paper letters, not emails, not texts. Words we couldn't say in person found their way into ink. Some letters were angry, others were tender. A few made me cry. One stuck with me. You loved me for the man I pretended to be, but I hope someday you can love me for the man I really am. I never replied to that one, not because I didn't feel something, but because I wasn't sure what I felt anymore. A visit to the grave. I went to Jordan's grave. Rachel, his aunt, had given me the location. It was small, quiet. The headstone read, Jordan Callahan, 1989 to 1999, gone too soon. I knelt down and whispered, your brother misses you. And in that moment, I finally cried, not for Daniel, not even for myself, but for a 10-year-old boy who never got a second chance, and for a man who spent his whole life running from that fire. It's strange how a secret can destroy something, and still make room for something else to grow. I didn't know if Daniel and I had a future, but I knew one thing. The past no longer had power over me. And maybe, just maybe, I could find myself again. But just when I thought the storm had passed, I got a call from Murray. Her voice was trembling. There's something else. Something I never told even Daniel. The days that followed our final confrontation with Greg's mother were strangely silent. And no more secrets. No more shouting. Just silence, heavy and unforgiving. We slept in separate rooms. We passed each other like strangers. We ate dinner in silence, pretending everything was fine. But inside, I knew we were both shattered beyond repair. Greg started therapy. He needed it badly. I encouraged him, even drove him to the first few sessions. He began trying to piece together his fractured childhood, this time with no illusions, no fairy tales of a perfect family, just raw truth. But for me, the healing wasn't so simple. I kept asking myself one question over and over. What does love really mean if it can be built on lies? The unexpected call on a rainy afternoon, while I was packing up boxes in the garage preparing to move out, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number. Hello? Is this Nora? The voice was soft, hesitant. Yes. Who's this? There was a pause. Then she said the name I never expected to hear again. This is Ava. My heart stopped. Ava. The woman Greg had grown up believing was his cousin. The woman who was actually his half-sister. The child born of an affair, a secret that had detonated our lives. I don't want to cause trouble, she said quickly. I found your number through a friend. I wanted to talk. Ava's truth met at a quiet diner on the edge of town. Ava was in her early 30s. Kind eyes, worn down by life but open, honest in a way few people are. I never knew about the affair, she said, stirring her tea. My mother told me my father was someone she barely knew. She never mentioned Greg's dad. I only found out when I did a DNA test for fun, one of those kits you send in. I felt my stomach tighten. Of course, the truth always finds a way out eventually. I reached out to your mother-in-law, Ava said. She told me never to call again. But then I saw your name and thought, maybe you deserve to hear it from me. What exactly? I asked. That I didn't want to destroy your marriage. Or his life. I didn't ask to be part of this secret. I didn't even know I was a secret. Greg's decision that night. I told Greg about the meeting with Ava. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. He just looked at me, eyes hollow, like someone who'd been emptied out. I've been thinking, he said, about us, about what's left. I already knew what was coming. I love you, Nora, he said, but I can't keep pretending we're okay. Not after everything. Not after what I let happen. I nodded. I'm tired, I whispered. Tired of fighting for something we both lost a long time ago. And just like that, it was over. The divorce, we kept things civil. No screaming matches. No long legal battles. Just a quiet agreement between two people who had loved each other and then lost their way. I moved into a small apartment downtown. I started a new job at a nonprofit. Something simple. Something good. Something that had nothing to do with betrayal or bloodlines. Greg kept the house. He stayed in therapy. He started writing letters to Ava, slow, cautious attempts at connection. They weren't siblings in the traditional sense, but they shared something sacred now. The truth. What we choose to remember years later. I ran into Greg at a bookstore. He looked older, softer around the edges. He smiled when he saw me. I'm doing better, he said. Ava and we talk sometimes. It's weird, but it helps. I smiled back. I'm glad, I said, and I meant it. As I walked away, I thought about everything we'd been through. All the lies, all the damage, but also the growth, the clarity. Some family secrets destroy us, but others, they set us free. In the end, it wasn't the secret that broke us. It was the silence, the pretending, the way we clung to an idea of family that never truly existed. But truth, no matter how painful, gives us the power to begin again. Sometimes healing means letting go, not of the past, but of the weight we were never meant to carry.